closing doors, please. Stand clear of the closing doors, please.
All right. My name is Ben Burgis. This is Give Them an Argument. I am joined by our producer, Jake Appett, union organizer by morning, MFA student by afternoon, GTA super producer by night, and our graphic designer, J. Andrew World. That's that guy at the bottom of your screen.
Or Fidel Castro, apparently.
Either way. And he is the one responsible for all the beautiful images you see on the thumbnails all the time. And what you just watched was the trailer for the Give Them a Revolution live show. So that is the joint Give Them an Argument Left Reckoning This is Revolution live show that is happening in New York City this Sunday. So I'm going to be there. These two guys on the screen here with me are going to be there. Jason Myles and Sam Seder, both of whom you're going to see in about 20 minutes on your screen, are going to be there. Kuba from This is Revolution is going to be there. Emma Vigeland is going to be there from Majority Report and the Emma Sports Vigeland Network. Let's see. Bhaskar Sunkara, my good friend, Jacobin editor, is going to be there. It should be a lot of fun. It's the second live show and the first one in New York since that last Michael Brooks show live show just before the world ended in 2020. So very, very excited about that. If you're wondering where I am right now and why there are traffic noises behind me, which there usually are not when we record this show, it's because at what we like to call Podcast Manor in Rosarito, that's by which I mean the apartment where I live, and then 2 units down, Jason Myles from This is Revolution lives. Power is out today, so hence Wi-Fi is out, and so I can't do the show there. So I am out in a cafe right now, sitting outside. It is not ideal circumstances, but despite these very not ideal circumstances, I am really looking forward to tonight's show. As I just mentioned, we are going to have Sam Seder. We are going to have Jason Myles, and we are also going to have our very good friend R.M. Brown on for a little power panel. Going to we've got some stuff about Ben Shapiro, Jordan Peterson, Tim Pool, a truly insane Republican congresswoman, not even one of the ones who's famous for being insane. So a lot of good stuff coming up at the half hour mark when we start this. But do want to go over a couple of other things. And I should say also, we're going to have Deep State Kuba and our live show producer, Jordan, joining us in the post game for Give Them an Argument patrons. If you are not already a patron, that is $5 a month, patreon.com/Ben Burgis. And it's a really good way to support the show, keep everything that we're doing here. Yeah?
I was saying, for anyone wondering, we have a link in the description, right, to get tickets for the live show. I see Jules out.
Yes, we do indeed have a live show link in the description of this video. Down there, keep scrolling. You'll come to the. I think it used to say Ticketmaster. It said Ticketweb. I don't know if Ticketmaster recently rebranded, possibly on the grounds of people thinking for some reason that they were a sinister monopoly. But
Taylor Swift, I think, has something to do with that.
Yeah, I don't know where anybody got that idea, but in any case, you can see that down below. There are still, I think, the tickets to the VIP meet and greet before are all sold out. But we still have general admissions tickets that are left if you want to grab one in the next day or two. Show is on Sunday, so that is January 22nd at the Cutting Room, which is very centrally located in Manhattan. It's like half a mile from Penn Station. So yeah, VIP meet and greet at 5. Doors open for general admission at 6. Show starts at 7. Should be getting out early enough at like 9:30 or something that everybody can have some time to mill around at the the bar at the venue afterwards. And mingle a little bit. So yeah, really looking forward to that. I should also say, if you are a GTAA patron, I've not posted this yet because I've been dealing with this power outage crisis all day. But we are going to put up something on the Patreon tonight. So if you have any questions that you would like to ask any of our live show guests in the Q&A at the end, we are going to be taking some patron questions at the end. So you can just stick those either in the comments on the post, which will be on the Patreon tonight, or you could just put those in the Discord. I think somebody will be collecting them there, and we'll ask some of them at the show. Believe we'll also have Andy. Logistical details are still being worked out, but I believe we'll be live drawing a couple of highlights of things that people say at the show, and then we'll have to figure out what to do with those drawings afterwards. So yeah, this should be really good. I'm really looking forward to it. We will talk about that more later in the show. But right now, I would like to turn my mental attention, as one so often does, to Slovenia and talk about a friend of the show, frequent guest, who's going to be a guest again in February because we still like him, Slavoj Žižek, who has undergone some pretty rough criticisms lately. So there was an article in Counterpunch at the beginning of January that called him capitalism's court jester, which is quite a title. And people may know I recently started a philosophy Substack because most of the writing I do is for Jacobin and the Daily Beast, and it's sort of politics of the moment stuff. But Philosophy for the People started this a couple weeks ago, like 3.5 weeks ago. The first official essay went up on New Year's Day, January 1st. And, I started that because I want philosophy writing, theory writing to be a bigger proportion of my overall output. And this was a good way to do it. I've been wanting that for a while. So, Observer says in a super chat, when are you all going to do a similar event to the West Coast? Go back a couple months in time, and we actually did in Los Angeles in October. But that will not be the last West Coast one ever. You have not just missed the one opportunity for all time. So in any case, on the Philosophy for the People Substack, called it that because the double meaning that the parts of it that are about political philosophy are bound up with left political program, but it's also philosophy for the people, not just for a few academics. I did write about this Zizek controversy. So it's called "Don't Cancel Zizek." Say I don't, in the subtitle there, I don't agree with my friend Slavoj Zizek about everything, but he's an insightful thinker, and I have nothing but contempt for attempts to denounce him as a philosophical lightweight or a neoliberal stooge. And I believe, I don't know if we're actually doing a clip of this or a screen share, but I believe we have a little bit of a discussion that I had earlier today about this very topic. This was at 9 in the morning, my time on the West Coast, because it was with Ashley Frowley, who's based in the UK, and then Doug Land, who was also getting up early in the morning. So we talked a little bit about the anti-Zizek piece and some of what I said in my response. And I guess the only two things I want to say really to set this up are just one, if read the essay. So that's benburgess.substack.com. You can read the essay itself. And if you do so, you'll see that I spend quite a bit of time talking about the sort of more philosophical, theoretical aspects of Slavoj's work and kind of what engaging with that work has meant to me over the decades, how it's changed some of my own thinking on some of these issues. But in this part specifically, I'm talking to Ashley about some of the more concrete points about his political position. So with that, I will shut up and we'll watch the clip.
So I think part of what people are rejecting with Zizek is they're accusing him of being just this sort of like closet liberal in a communist guise. And in this piece that we were looking at, the Rockhill piece, he makes a very sort of specific criticism of Zizek of being a neoliberal for supporting particular policies of neoliberalization in Eastern Bloc countries after the fall of really existing socialism. I just wondered what you thought about that. I think there's all sorts of stuff going on with this. There's a kind of trajectory toward anti-liberalism within left. Where it's like, oh, you fucking liberals, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, the liberalism question to me is a little bit complicated because people mean really different things by it that should be disaggregated.
Right, exactly.
Just like crassly, I think free speech is very good and economic neoliberalism is very bad. So I think that's a discussion worth having. I will say really specifically on the Rockhill thing and on Zizek and neoliberalism. People can read the essay that I wrote about this, and I go into like probably tedious detail about this because it really offended me how inaccurate this was. But Rockhill sort of goes through two sources. One is a interview that Zizek and some other people did for a radical philosophy journal. It was like this 30-page thing called Lacan in Slovenia in 1991, and the other is a debate that a startlingly young-looking Zizek is doing in 1990 as a failed candidate for political office. And so what he pulls out of the Lacan in Slovenia interview is a sentence, like one sentence and part of another, where he says, "Well, I'm a pragmatist. If a dose of market reforms will help us, with our economic crisis, I'm open to trying it," or something like that. And then the other is that he pulls out of that candidate debate this not even a sentence or a phrase, not even a clause of a sentence, but just the words planned privatization. And then something about it, more capitalism in our case means more social security. And if those are the three data points you're looking at, it paints a really clear picture that Zizek is somebody who was on the vanguard of demanding more neoliberal economic restructuring in Slovenia in 1990 and 1991, which is almost the opposite of the picture that emerges if you actually click through to Rockhill's sources. That in the Lacan in Slovenia interview, the next, literally the next sentence after what he quotes, he starts talking about how, okay, I'm enough pragmatist to say, try a dose, which, by the way, this could be, Tito could have said the same thing. Lenin as Doug pointed out when I was talking about this with him last night, could have said the same thing in 1921 when he was implementing the new economic policy. But immediately, like the next sentence, he's saying, well, but I don't want to take this I don't want to go along with this sort of neoliberal idea. This is just a sort of like experts can tell us what we need, and like just making like full on Thatcherism or Friedman-esque economics. He said just taking that outside of the sphere of ideological contestation. That's like the next thing he said. And then the candidate debate is even more like crazily misleading in both cases, because what he's really specifically saying with the thing about more capitalism in our case would be more social security is he's saying, like just before it, he says, well, look, don't compare us to, these other countries, mentions places in Latin America, right? If you're comparing us to our immediate capitalist neighbors, then he claims workers have more social security there than they're having in Slovenia right now, when we're just turning people onto the streets as we're engaged in this privatization and restructuring. And when he says the thing about, so more capitalism in our case, i.e. being more like our immediate, more social democratic capitalist neighbors, would mean more social security for workers. And the thing about planned privatizations, the context is that he's saying, like he's denouncing what he calls wild privatizations that have happened, and said that and explicitly advocating that companies that have already been privatized in Slovenia at that point be renationalized. And if we deliberatively decide later we need to privatize them, they can at least be planned privatizations with an eye towards social and ecological consequences. And really, if you watch the clip, like the video from that debate that Rockhill himself links, I think in his footnote, like he's staking out positions on this that might be to the right of everybody here right now, but like are certainly wildly to the left of the other candidates on the stage. And he's been accused by the other candidates of wanting to turn upside down all the progress that's been made in overcoming communism. They say, no, this mad push towards privatization is turning everything upside down. I'm advocating a return to sanity. And from all, from like, I think the reasonable left critique of what he said is that by 1990, 1991, he's clearly resigned to the march towards restored capitalism in Slovenia. He doesn't think that's stoppable. And his political horizons are limited to just trying to make it a gentler, more social democratic kind of capitalism, right? If you want to critique that, fair enough. But I think if you're going to do it in an honest way, one, I think you should acknowledge that he didn't stop thinking or writing about these issues in 1991, and quite a bit said since then has been much more radical. And two, that in 1991, judging by the very pieces of evidence that Rockhill himself cites, if you go through and read them or watch them, the kinds of opinions he was expressing on this stuff, on economic policy, seem to have been on the far left of the spectrum of mainstream opinion in Slovenia at the time.
Yeah.
All right. I saw a question in the chat about what year that debate was that I'm referring to. That is from 1990. And I think if you, again, I think that the only thing I would add to what I say in the clip is if you look at his opinions over the decades since then, he supported Occupy Wall Street. He spoke in Zuccotti Park. He supported Syriza and its brief stand against EU austerity in 2015. He was a strong supporter of both of the Bernie Sanders campaigns in the U.S. He defended Jeremy Corbyn in the UK when Corbyn was accused of anti-Semitism and all that. And so it seems like, far from being an advocate of neoliberalism, his consistent posture has been to sort of try to, defend whatever he thought was the most left-wing available option out of the sort of realistic spectrum of what existed at the time. And, I'm not saying there might not be legitimate criticisms of that, but I don't think they're very much like the ones that have been made. So again, if you want to check that out, that's on the Philosophy for the People Substack. The name of that essay is Don't Cancel Zizek, and the Substack is benburgess.substack.com. Unless either of you guys want to throw anything in on that.
I just remember talking to somebody from Slovenia, and they actually brought up that presidential run and just said, "Oh, he's a Stalinist," and that was literally all they said about him. So it's very much the opposite of what this person's takeaway of that debate was.
Yeah, well, it's really funny because even a couple of years ago, critiques of Zizek like they sort of not like, oh, he got this or that wrong, but these like kind of big sweeping condemnations of Zizek. Even the ones that were emerging from the socialist left, like Current Affairs published an article a couple of years ago called like "What is Zizek for?" Tended to take that tack. They would accuse him of being like too Stalinist or too soft on that kind of authoritarian capital C communism. And the more recent critiques are exactly the opposite. They're like, oh, actually, he was secretly a pawn of, NATO and the CIA all along. And I would suggest, again, people can read the essay. I would suggest that neither of those things is really true, and that he has a much more plausible position on all this stuff than you would think. Again, he should be back in the show, I think in early February sometime. Looking forward to that. Last thing I wanted to do before we bring in our power panel of Sam Seder, Jason Myles, and R.M. Brown is I wanted to talk a little bit about Brazil, because just wrote an article about the situation in Brazil. It's called Deport Bolsonaro. Normally when people move from Latin America to the United States and people want to deport them, I'm on the side of wanting to let them stay, but in this case, I'm prepared to make an exception. I should correct something inaccurate I said in passing when we were talking about this last week, which is that we were looking at a letter. It was obviously written in Portuguese, and I hadn't looked at it closely enough beforehand, and I said that it was a extradition request. What it was a Brazilian congressperson writing a letter to the Ministry of Justice saying they should extradite him. That still hasn't happened yet. But since I even wrote this article, the Ministry of Justice has opened a formal investigation into his role in the attempted coup on January 8th. And I would also point out, you don't need to wait for a formal extradition request to kick him out, right? You could essentially say to him, as bartenders have been saying to drugs at the end of the night since time immemorial, you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. And I think that it would be good to do that, because given the extremely long and gruesome history of the United States supporting right-wing coups in Latin America, I think not offering safe haven to a right-wing authoritarian whose supporters just attempted a coup against the democratically elected government with apparent involvement by that very authoritarian leader. Certainly, like his Minister of Justice actually had plans that were found in his house for like a formal declaration of like an emergency government. If the attempt on January 8th had been successful to bring back Bolsonaro. The Brazilian chief of police, this is actually one of the respects in which, for all the superficial similarities, I think this was actually a much nearer miss than January 6th in the United States. That there does seem to have been this complicity by the military police in Brasilia, that they like actually escorted the rioters to the Capitol. The head of the district police in Brasilia was not there on the 8th because he was in vacation in Florida, which is where Bolsonaro was. In fact, during that week leading up to the coup, Bolsonaro's pictures were constantly on social media because people would see him like wandering the aisles at Publix or, enjoying some KFC. And so, I suppose it's possible that Bolsonaro had no idea that an attempted coup was being planned in his name. I will point out that his nephew was a participant, but I suppose it's possible that Uncle Jair had no idea what he was planning. I suppose it's even possible that the security chief for Brasilia didn't cross paths with Jair while they were both in Florida, or if they did cross paths, that all they talked about was, I don't know, the menu offerings at KFC that they were enjoying, or what was available at the aisles at Publix. But all I'm saying is, look, if you're watching this, if you're in Orlando, if you run into Jair, maybe tell him that the authorities back home have some questions for him.
Yeah, let's harass him. I want to see those videos of people coming up to him and just being like, yelling at him in Portuguese about all his terrible stuff, and ask him, how he can wear pants.
Yeah. So, I mean, I will say, like, probably the thing that's made my atheism shake the most in the last several years has been what sure seemed like a whole series of biblical plagues that's been visited on Jair Bolsonaro. But we do have a clip on this. So this is this was put out by Lula, the newly elected social democratic president in Brazil, and it's in Portuguese, but I got a translation from Brian Meyer at Telesur. So I will read Brian's translation for you guys afterwards, but he's showing the scenes of devastation from the storming of the government buildings in Brasilia on the 8th.
Eles vão perceber que a democracia, ela garante o direito de liberdade, ela garante o direito de livre comunicação, de livre expressão, mas ela também exige que as pessoas respeitem as instituições que foram criadas para fortalecer a democracia. Não tem precedente na história do nosso país. Não existe precedente o que essa gente fez e por isso essa gente terá de ser punida. E nós, inclusive, vamos descobrir quem são os financiadores desses vândalos que foram a Brasília. Nós vamos descobrir os financiadores e todos eles pagarão com a força da lei esse gesto de irresponsabilidade, esse gesto antidemocrático e esse gesto de vândalos e de fascistas.
All right, so according to Brian at Telesur, I messaged him about this because I do not speak Portuguese. I'm working on Spanish, but I do not speak Portuguese. He says that Lula in that clip is saying they're going to find out that democracy guarantees the right to freedom, free communications, and free expression, but that it also demands that people respect the institutions that were created to strengthen it. There's no precedent in the history of our nation for what these people did, and for that reason, these people have to be punished. We're going to find out who funded these vandals that came to Brasilia. We're going to find out who the funders are, and all of them will pay with the force of the law for this undemocratic, irresponsible act, for this act of vandals and fascists. So, I don't know. It's possible. They do things a little bit differently in Brazil. It's not the United States. It's possible that powerful people who break the law might actually face some sort of consequences. We'll find out.
Yeah, because we know powerful people have faced consequences that were for things that didn't happen. So let's see if they can do it for things that do happen.
Yeah, exactly. All right. With that, do we have our guests backstage?
Yeah, we sure do.
All right, outstanding. Let us bring in our panel. So we have the person who is geographically the closest to me right now, who is Jason Myles from This Is Revolution. And we have the person who is most geographically distant from me right now, who's Sam Seder, primarily best known, I believe, as the voice of Hugo on Bob's Burgers.
You're heading here. I am your future.
Exactly. Yeah, that's true.
We're coming sooner than you think.
Oh, I know.
Oh, okay. Good.
Yeah. Should actually be in the same room with Sam even a couple days before the live show. And then in between them, geographically, we have RM Brown.
Hey guys, thanks for having me, Ben. Always fun. Hey, what's up, Jason and Sam? How are you?
Good.
I didn't realize he was going to be here.
I love
sorry.
your Steely Dan shirt in
Sa-
black.
Sa-
Thank you.
I think Sam's gonna have to leave now because he didn't realize he was gonna be asked to be here with.
I wanted to
Jason
confront him.
is-
I wanted to confront him about the force the vote stuff because I'm a big force the vote guy. So I'm gonna really nail some asses on that one. Yeah.
Oh man, it was a good discussion.
Now I know how Crowder feels.
Surprise, gotcha.
Well, I will actually say that is a little bit funny to me on multiple levels because I had written. I promise you guys we're not going to spend more than 2 minutes talking about this.
Oh my God.
But
Let's wrap this up, shall we?
Yeah. But 2 years ago when all this first came up, I wrote an article for Jacobin where I said that force the vote didn't make sense to me, like as a strategy. And fast forward to like a couple weeks ago, Brianna Joy Gray started tweeting about how I had and she started bringing up this article that I'd written years ago and saying that I'd been disproven because of the Republican, speaker vote. And I invited her on the show to talk about it, talk over her criticisms of the article. She declined. Also, Jimmy Dore started tweeting at me.
Let me just ask you one question. Did she show up in your YouTube chat while you were talking about it? Because that's been my experience when you invite someone and they can't make it because they're too busy, but then you see them in your YouTube chat in the exact time you would invite them on. I'm just saying that happens. That happens.
Well, in this one, you guys keep saying FTV. Keep saying
she actually,
exactly. Say it 3 times.
Well, she actually did do that in like fall 2020. I was on the Jacobin, the weekend show they used to do on Jacobin, and we were talking about her debate with Noam Chomsky about lesser evil voting, and while I was talking to Anna Kasparian and Nanda Vila about that on the show, and I was very nice about it, right? I was being extremely polite, right? I nothing disrespectful, just like, okay, here's why the perspective that she's saying in this clip doesn't really make sense to me or whatever. And she showed up in the chat to say, like, I noticed nobody's talking about the concerns of Black people. So,
maybe she had a point. I'm sure. Did she ultimately delete it? Because that's what happened. That's my understanding.
Yeah, I don't know. But in any case, that's the funniest thing about this to me is that Jimmy Dore gets in on the act. He starts tweeting, I think he tweets about me a dozen times over the course of a few days, and likes several dozen tweets by his fans about me. And I also invite him to come on the show to present any criticisms that he has. And
did he say he was too sick? Because I've had that experience. I've had that experience as well. I'm too sick. I can't. I'm dealing with illness.
Well, Sam, we're only like a couple hours from Dude. Like, I'm hella down to go to his studio. Be like, bro, let's just talk it out. I'm 2.5 hours away.
I'm sure the security on his compound is pretty tight.
If they're worried about my ass, then them motherfuckers is not serious.
That is, I will just say this about that. So he didn't say that. What he said is that he wasn't gonna it wasn't, even though it was worth it to him to tweet about me over and over and over again, it wasn't worth it to him to talk to me because I was obviously a lying egghead fraud. That was those were all words that were used there. But the funniest thing about this is I think one of the tweets by his fans that he liked was that I was a smug, comfortable liberal who probably had health insurance myself, etc. And it's like, motherfucker, I live in a 1-bedroom apartment. I've seen pictures of the place that Jimmy lives,
where we have no power. Where our water gets shut off randomly.
Yes, but Jimmy's dad was a cop and he has a Chicago accent. So clearly he understands the needs of the working class better than you do. So
yeah, fair enough. So I do want to move on from Jimmy Dore, if that's okay with our end.
Let me just say, he also figured out the Seth Rich thing way before you did. So,
and he's a pothead comedian, so if he can figure it out,
that's right.
You're
he
jealous
just
of him,
masturbates.
apparently,
He said. I think his official logo is a masturbatory comedian. He said.
Jag off comedian.
Oh, jack off. Okay, I knew it was something like that.
Well, I'm not a masturbatory comedian, so I can't, I can't speak to that. But I did want to move to, I will forswear any speculation about how distant a part of the political spectrum, but a different part of the political spectrum in just a moment. But first, Ryan earlier told me that he had an off-topic thing that he wanted to raise.
Oh,
and
you want to start with this? Okay, it's completely off topic. It's something that I've heard Sam talk about, and it's not funny. There's nothing interesting about it, but I've heard.
Good. Oh, good. I'm glad you asked to do this on my show.
I mean, yeah, it's gonna could totally ruin your show.
Better on your show than his.
Exactly. Very strategic. So bye, subscribers. But Sam, I wanted to ask you.
Well, my understanding of your show is very entertaining.
Oh yeah.
So people, if they're looking for something,
we don't waste a second on my show. I think maybe some of them will be interested. I've heard you talk about this maybe to like Matthew Film Guy or something, but you never go too far with this. But I've heard you talk about Dogma 95 a couple times. I wanted to get your opinion on Dogma 95 because it feels like a totally forgotten film movement. You're like the only person that I ever hear talk about it. I just want to see maybe briefly what you think about it, and if you're hungry for like a new film movement like that.
Well, my perspective on that was, and the reason why it resonates so much with me is because at that time that it came out, I think it was it The Celebration, or there was I can't remember what the first movie that Von Trier or Vinterberg did out of that at that time, but I had just shot a movie on digital video, and it was, I think, the first fictional non-mixed media movie shot on digital video and converted, certainly on digibeta, because we had the first Sony camera. Like they gave it to us for free, and we converted it at 4MC. And when Dogma 95 came out, my producer and I were talking. I was like, these guys are smart and we're fucking idiots, because they wanted to shoot on video. And so they reverse engineered a manifesto that allowed them only to shoot on video. And it became a feature, not a bug. Whereas for us, it was like, when I told my agent or my lawyer or whatever, whoever it was, that said, why did you shoot this on video? And I'm like, well, it was the only way I could do it, low budget. I wanted to use existing lighting. I didn't want to have sync the sound. And, I wanted to do a lot of improv, which is exactly why Dogma 95 existed. They wanted to shoot on video. And so they created a manifesto that would only allow them to shoot on video. They didn't say video. I don't think the word video actually is even in the manifesto, but it's like, you need existing light. You can't bring any lights in. You have to record sound and picture simultaneously. And there was a couple
CGI, no effects, no titles.
Yeah. It was all basically justifying how we're going to do this low budget, but they were smart. They understood that they came from a cinema background, and I came from a jagoff comedian background.
I can't wait for Jimmy Dore's Dogma 95 to come out. That's going to be interesting. The Force the Vote, the movie or whatever.
Well, it'll be, it'll be well within the sort of tradition of works of art created by political commentators, Tim Pool's band, shit like that. So
it'll be Dogma 95, Dogma 96, Dogma 97, Dogma 98, Dogma 99, and just on and on and on.
Well, Jason, did you have anything you wanted to add on this? Or?
No. I've never seen Dogma 95. At first, I thought he meant the Kevin Smith movie. I was like, didn't that come out in 2000?
Well, I mean, maybe the tie-in is sort of like lo-fi, like doing things lo-fi
Totally.
in a way to kind of make it, you know, when you don't want to spend a lot of money, or like Sam was saying, if you want to use video or something, you use lo-fi as an asset, as like to make it seem more edgy. While
Richard
at the same
Rodriguez did a movie called El Mariachi that I think they remade it, but the first one he did was on, like, you know, this was at a time where people would like, I maxed out my credit card to $12,000 and did the movie, but he because of the way he was shooting, he screwed up his sync with his 16 millimeter, and so he could only keep the sound in sync to the picture for, like, I don't know what it was, like 12 seconds. And so he would cut every 12 seconds to hide the fact that he was losing sync. And when he presented it, people were like, this is an amazing new style of cutting. It's so dynamic and kinetic. And he did it because he didn't have sync. And he successfully covered, you know, and he made a big career out of it. But I mean, that's, you know, sometimes those things, those limitations create, you know, new art. So I don't know.
Well,
I mean,
his backstory for that too was interesting. I don't know how true it is, but he did like medical experiments to raise the money for that movie. He was like a test subject in Austin, to raise the money.
Yeah, I think Linkletter may have had a story like that too for Slackers. I'm not sure, but yeah, that I mean, everybody. That was the early '90s, mid '90s. You know,
after Robert Townsend kind of did that with Hollywood Shuffle. I remember that was all the hype around Hollywood Shuffles, that he was getting extended all this credit.
Oh yeah.
And every time he'd get a credit card, he maxed it out to do the movie, and I think he finished the film on like $30,000, whatever credit card debt.
Yeah. That was that. I mean, that was the. I mean, people are still doing that, I think, today. I think there's just, you know, it's a different world because video is far more acceptable, and there's, you know, there's more outlets to get the film out there.
Yeah. So you're talking about people at the beginning of their careers. I want to talk about somebody very early in their career. This could be an amazing transition. Who is somebody who became a congresswoman a little bit less than 2 weeks ago. Was sworn in at the beginning of the month from Florida. This is Anna Paulina Luda. Do we have the clip of Anna Paulina Luda?
I'm not going to say that I want to cut defense spending, but I will say that I think it's important that we are looking to make sure that we are getting the best deal, especially on some of the stuff that we're spending money on. So I think that we need to have those discussions. But more or less what I've heard in some of these negotiations is we're talking about programs that aren't going to the necessities that we, the American people, need, i.e. protections. I'm talking about some of these woke ideology, these funded programs, and for example, these salaries for these additional weaponized 87,000 IRS agents, which you saw we tried to pass, yet the Senate and even the Biden White House is pushing back on. Sir, I say taxation is theft, and I don't want any more IRS agents than you probably do.
All right, so.
Well, we're going to cut back on those things that we're going to cut back on the budget, especially on those things that we're spending money on. That's what I really.
Makes sense.
I mean, it does make sense.
I couldn't hear your introduction to that woman. She's running for Congress, or she's in Congress?
No, she's in Congress. She just got to Congress.
She got elected.
Yeah, she got elected. And
voted for her?
Well, she represents Florida's 13th congressional district.
Is that where all the what does Pascal call them? Gusanos are?
It is Sarasota, DeSoto, and Hardy counties. So not really. That's like St. Petersburg, like that. Like
I know what that is.
Yeah, but I just found that fascinating. So I should say, I should give credit where credit's due. I saw this clip because Tim Pool tweeted about it. He said it was based this thing that she'd said. But I just find this kind of amazing because this is a congresswoman, and she sounds like nothing so much as like a libertarian 5 years ago calling into the Majority Report.
I mean, this is the I've heard a lot of people use the line, "We're going to cut the military, but only the woke parts." I mean, honestly, like I've heard multiple Republicans say that.
We're going to cut
out the woke parts.
Yeah, it's going to be like, the 87th woke division is going to get cut, but
I don't know
what
exactly
does the woke
that
division
means.
look like? I want to know what the woke division looks like and what do they do?
I don't know
when do you
what that
send out
means.
the woke division?
It just means like, I don't know, like a pride day in the military. I have no idea. I have honestly no idea. But the taxation is theft. I mean, of course. I mean, I would imagine, look, I would imagine, Ron Paul may have said something similar, but the point is that now I bet you there are dozens of Republican congresspeople, that are backbenchers. She's probably like, she's younger than your average Republican. She's a woman, so she's not like your average Republican. I think she's Latina, so not like your average Republican. I mean, this is a party that is, I mean, just statistically speaking, was like 90% white, and it is, the representatives in Congress for at least, essentially eternity, up until very, very recently, have been overwhelmingly male. And so she's more, she has like some star appeal, but I don't think I think there's a lot of Republican congressmen who would say, if anybody bothered to put a camera in front of them, taxation is theft. I mean, I think they believe that. I think they absolutely do believe that. I mean, they're receiving stolen funds when they get paid. They don't see,
Is she supposed to be right-wing AOC? Is that how they're pitching her? Like, you got yours, we got us.
Isn't Marjorie Taylor Greene right-wing AOC?
No, because she's not a hot woman of color.
Okay.
Yeah.
We got this brown bra. We're gonna talk out here on Fox News.
I think she does have brown eyes. So.
Yeah, fair enough. Although Marjorie Taylor Greene wasn't, like, she's not really playing the role. I mean, she was a you guys need to calm down and elect McCarthy as speaker person.
She I mean, look, I think she was smart about it. She wants power, and she bet on a horse that she thought would give her the most power, and ultimately it might. Although, if he goes, I don't know how well she's going to do in the future. But she's like the fourth biggest Republican fundraiser, so she's got some type of power. She just needs to. Ben, where are you?
We're in the Soco Cafe in Rosarito, Baja.
Are both of you guys there?
Yeah, the wind. You're getting some
so-
wind noise, a little bit of wind noise.
So wait,
there.
Ben's outside and you're inside?
Yeah, I am outside because I have my dog with me. So I'm sitting at an outdoor table. RM.
Thought maybe you guys got in a fight or something. So you're not
yeah. It's like, look, we're still going to do the podcast, but like, I am not sitting in the same room. So the apartment building where I live, and Jason's in the same building, has the power is knocked out. And so I could not do it from there. So, which is really sad because I actually have a pretty nice little home studio now. So I am doing it from outside a cafe.
The Soco Cafe in Rosarito, Baja, California.
Yeah. There we go.
Sounds better now.
That's good. Yeah.
When you I was
hoping
Sam?
I was hoping that the wind would be a little bit better in this location. But
I'd like to come soon.
Oh yeah, please. So I have as I said, I have a 1-room apartment, but I think Jason has a guest room, so you can stay there.
I do.
That's very nice of you to
Inside,
invite me,
yes.
Ben, to Jason's house.
Yeah, exactly.
Did you see that comment says Ben and Jason sleep in the same room with the chalk line down?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
We need to do a buddy cop movie, Ben, because
Yeah.
I think we got this Murtaugh and Riggs Lethal Weapon thing down pat for the podcast. I'm too old for this.
old for this shit.
You know, you're always on edge,
Yeah.
but in
As
more of a
any-
Jewish way. Like,
Sure.
I
Ben,
bet
are you on your phone?
I am indeed on my phone because my webcam is literally affixed to the lighter rig.
See,
And
I
the,
told you the Dogma 95 thing was going to connect. So.
Yeah, there you go. It's all come back around. And now that he's set the precedent, he can go to any cafe to do a show.
but we had
Selling out if he doesn't.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. Well, I'm a very comfortable, smug liberal, in that 1-room, 1-bedroom apartment where the fucking powers leave
no
on.
heat. No heat.
I am just fascinated though by this idea, right? That like, okay, taxation is theft, but fine for me to accept stolen goods because I have a congressional salary. It's even fine, I think, for us to tax to pay for other things, because she said we should be cutting the woke parts of the military, but that implies that the non-woke parts of the military, can still stay funded. I'm just very confused by how you could justify being a member of Congress if you literally believed that like taxation and government was like just an illegitimate thing to do. And if you don't mean that, like what on earth does it even mean to say that taxation is theft?
Well, I mean, I actually don't think it's unreasonable that you could be a congressperson, right? I happen to think that taxes should be higher, and then someone says, well, just give the money, no, but that's not the point. The point is that I think taxes should be higher, not that I or any individual should pay. And so I think I don't think that's the issue. I think literally they think taxation is theft. An old neighbor of mine upstate, who I walk in one day into his, he was a carpenter, into his wood shop, and it was completely filled with Ron Paul signs. This was about, I guess, 15 years ago. Maybe it was really 2008. And he was going to go out and paint the town Ron, is what Ron Paul people do. And they were like putting it on like Route 87. They were going like they were traveling like an hour and a half in every direction. And we got into it. And my understanding is that they believe the income tax is illegal because I think it was Kansas did not actually have a quorum or when they voted for the constitutional amendment in 1917, the income tax.
Yeah.
And so they think that it's illicit and therefore it's theft. And I think also part of it is their non-aggression principle says that no one should have a monopoly of force. It really, in their mind, I think it should be just like an oligopoly of force where like just 5 or 6 major like fiefdoms will have force and the rest of us will just hope that, we align with one of them. I mean, honestly, it is like the people who call in, like, literally like 4, sentences in, all of a sudden the whole thing falls apart. And, but you can just start with taxation and theft. And people are like, I'd rather, not have to give up any of my money. That's the way I think certainly on Fox Business, that's certainly.
Well, especially also too, Sam, when you're young and you get that first paycheck and you're like, wait a minute, but I calculated this.
Right.
$8 an hour.
Right.
And everybody's a libertarian. And I definitely remember my younger brother in 2007, 2008 was kind of enamored, and his little group of friends were enamored with Ron Paul as well, because Ron Paul was anti-war. And if you go in the Wayback Machine to the Morton Downey Jr. days, Ron Paul was to the left of Morton Downey Jr., far to the left of Morton Downey Jr., because he was talking about the legalization of things like marijuana, and also, kind of lessening the police state, and of course, being anti-war, which we weren't in any huge confrontations at the time, like we ended up being in the later 90s and 2000s. But it is interesting that the idea of a left was so weak that some libertarian can come in and be so upfront about how libertarian they were with the taxation rhetoric, but just being anti-war.
Well, I mean, I will say, I can remember watching 2008. That was the first time Ron Paul ran for the Republican nomination, right? That's because I know he did in 2012 too. But I can remember, look, he said a lot of things I thought were grotesque about domestic economic policy, but I can remember moments when they'd start talking about foreign policy at the debate stage. I'd be like, God damn, it sounds like Noam Chomsky, slipped into the Republican debate. He'd be saying things about, like you shouldn't call the Iraqi insurgents terrorists because if somebody invaded your country, when you shoot at them, and, stuff like that was just totally unheard of, that somebody would express those sentiments in that context. So, I felt a little stirring of that at the time. It's like, hey, I kind of like this guy. And then he would say that people should be allowed to die if they don't have health care. It's like, okay, maybe I don't like him after all.
Yeah. And it's interesting. I think, I think what we're seeing, right now, because, I've obviously been really sort of monitoring libertarians for quite some time. And I really think we're the vanguard of libertarianism now, because the pot thing is largely no longer a libertarian issue, right? It's become so mainstream, legalizing cannabis, that it's not, it's even as much as Biden wants to lead from behind. I would be surprised if he's not. Well, he's already pushing it as much almost as he can. I mean, you need statutory authority for the most part to drop its schedule, drop it on the schedule. But there's other things that they can do that might at least help the banking.
Yeah, he could have certainly done a less narrowly tailored pardon, and actually
the pardon could have been a little bit wider as well. I mean, I think ultimately they're going to get there, but nevertheless, it's no longer a libertarian sales point. I mean, I think that's why we're hearing a lot more of the authoritarianism stuff that we're hearing is coming from, if not, full on libertarians, certainly libertarian adjacent. It is becoming sort of like the vanguard, and the idea of maximalist free speech interpretations. For the vast majority of the history of this country, anything beyond you can't yell fire in a crowded theater like that. You don't hear that raised that much in the context of everything that we hear about these days. And I think a lot of what we're seeing is the libertarian movement always sort of mutates and finds almost like water running downhill on somewhere, finds where there's an opening. And I think there's a big opportunistic, and we're seeing it with Taibbi and Greenwald, and then sort of the concept of the IDW was also sort of libertarian-ish, at least in not in policy, but in terms of a branding marketing thing, right? I mean, this is appealing to the same sort of like inclinations that I think people first on a surface level get attracted to libertarianism with. And I think we're going to see more of that. And I think that's going to be the sort of that is the entree where, drug legalization was maybe 5 years ago. And really, when you look at what's going on with Biden in terms of his foreign policy, it's not great, but you don't hear people giving him any applause for dramatically dropping the number of drone attacks that we're involved in. I mean, dramatically, in such a huge way that you don't hear anybody talk about it anymore. And certainly you would. And there's, I think that the issue with Ukraine now is more about like, what's the end game? What's the exit strategy, as opposed to like, and I think there's a debate as to whether you should fund and how much you should fund. And, but it's really more about like, what's the limiting principle here? I mean, so, a lot of like the anti-war, we pulled out of Afghanistan. We could see more in terms of like getting rid of the AUMF, but, that is not as sort of like a low-hanging fruit for libertarians in the way that it was, I think, under Obama, and certainly, over the past like 20 years.
Yeah, no, I think that's true. I mean, like, I don't think we should talk about it without acknowledging that the freezing of Afghanistan's assets has been a real humanitarian disaster.
Without a doubt.
But yeah, I mean, I think the fact that, I mean, it is shocking. Like, it was actually kind of shocking and good that that Biden stuck with the withdrawal from Afghanistan. I mean, I remember a couple of years ago, watching a science fiction movie that was set in like 2090 or something, and they and like the guy in the movie had just gotten back from like surfing in Afghanistan. I was like, yeah, that sounds about right. Like that.
And Biden screwed up the Iran nuke deal. I mean, and so I want to make sure that I'm not overstating the case, but in terms of like, military conflicts, it's just not as obvious, as low hanging of a fruit for the libertarians anymore, because there's nothing in the front pages or even in page 14 of the New York Times. And there's nobody out there making their bones on it, on YouTube, or like, it's just, there's foreign policy issues, but in terms of like war, Ukraine is really the closest thing that it is. And it's, we're sending money, we're sending weapons, but we're not actively engaging. We didn't start that war either. I mean, it was Russia invaded Ukraine. I mean, it's a very different, I think it doesn't have the same salience and marketing opportunity for libertarians.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, I do want to like, I mean, I am, I think that like concerns about escalation with Russia and like how that could spiral out of control, are like real concerns that, that both libertarians and leftists have raised. But yeah, I agree. I mean, like we are to the same, like, I think if you were in the Bush administration or the Obama administration, like that era, right, we are like substantially out of that era in terms of what was going on then, which definitely does change that. I do want to point out, by the way, since every time I hear somebody quote that phrase, I want to point this out, that the original context of that thing about yelling fire at a crowded theater was the Supreme Court upholding the conviction of a group of socialists who'd been passing out Yiddish language, anti-war and anti-conscription literature during World War I. So, it's there's something to think about there about who gets to decide what counts as a real fire.
Of course, I agree. I mean, obviously that making that assessment, but yelling fire in a crowded theater in and of itself
No, I mean literally
I
doing
may
that is
disagree
bad.
where you
shouldn't be.
apply that, what constitutes that, but you know, like I don't think we should be, the government should be cracking down on you know, should be jailing people who, you know, are pushing hydrochloroquine or whatever it is for COVID or something like that. But it's not impossible to imagine a scenario where, like, you know, if COVID was like Ebola, it might be, you know, maybe people be less inclined to do that. But you know, but the point being that there's a maximalist position, you know, how laws are applied and principles are applied is always where the rubber meets the road. But the idea, but I think there are maximalists, people who would argue, I don't know about that in terms of a fire in a crowded theater. It's a performance. I mean, you know, like honestly, I think you know, I think there are people who don't necessarily even agree with that principle. And you know, and certainly it was more of a bedrock before, you know, in a different era.
Yeah. So we've been talking about the right and civil liberties, and I wanted to talk about friend of the show, Ben Shapiro, who tweeted this today, I believe, if we have this. And he says, yes, why should parents? So he's So the context here is that there's this law that was introduced in the state legislature in Mississippi, mandated that for the sake of parents' rights, and then like the ability of parents to see what their children are being taught, that cameras be installed, you know, like with a public feed, you know, so parents can access it. Surveillance cameras in not only every K-12 classroom, but also every public university classroom in Mississippi. And other Ben is responding to people saying this is horrifying, saying, yes, why should parents have the ability to see what teachers are saying to their children? Everybody else, because they're our kids, not yours or the NEA's.
I mean, this is just another distraction thing, right? I mean, it's the same thing with I don't know if you guys saw the Stove Act. Did you see that? In Louisiana, the Stove Act, we're not going to allow a ban on gas stoves. It's just like, hey, what's in the news? What's the headline? Yeah, all right. As long as it makes it, we don't have to really do anything. Yeah, let's make a law out of that, you know?
Well, I really hope that we could all spend as much energy as possible arguing about gas stoves, but that would actually
the gas stoves is like is you know, this year's light bulbs. I don't know if you guys remember the light bulb thing. In fact, I think Trump, when he came back, you know, rolled back the light bulb requirements, and the light bulb manufacturers are like, dude, we moved on. We figured out how to make better light bulbs because of that government regulation. And the stove thing, you know, there's a lot of evidence that it leads to neurological damage in kids and asthma. But I think the school thing is different. And the reason is because the stove thing is like what you're talking about. It's light bulbs. It's Dr. Seuss. It is the sort of like cultural outrage du jour. You know, Trump was talking about like the water pressure and the toilets. You have to flush it twice type of thing. But there is a long-standing desire on the right to dismantle public education. That is, I think, really, I mean, public education exists because the radical Republicans in Reconstruction knew that we could not have any semblance of equality in this country if we did not allow for public education and for and largely, though certainly not exclusively, freed slaves need to be educated, and their kids need to be educated. And there is, you know, the right has wanted to defund public education, and this is a vehicle to do it, because the surveillance cameras are not there so that like I can check and see if Johnny's doing his homework and Betty's, drawing pretty pictures. It's to surveil the teachers. It's to surveil the teachers and make sure they're not, starting with, they're not in any way, suggesting that they're not heterosexual.
Mm-hmm.
And then it moves from there into like, they're talking a lot about slavery, and they're making it like the Civil War was about slavery. And then it's like, and there's not been we're not hearing the other side, like how much better the slaves had it in this country than they did in Africa. We're not hearing that side of it. That's not balanced. I mean, this is, and what happens is it begins to, it's an assault on public education. And that's what they want. And they want that money, and they want it to go to private schools. They want it to go to parochial schools in particular. They want that money. They want, it's the same sort of like structure as privatizing Social Security. Dumb money comes in. They have no problem with the money being collected. In fact, Betsy DeVos said this, and her husband were interviewed years and years ago, way prior to Trump. I have no problem with public education. I have a problem with public schools. And what that means is I'm okay with collecting money for public education. That's the public part. Collect the money from the public and then give that money to parochial schools.
Yeah.
It's really for DeVos, it's parochial.
Mm-hmm.
They want it to go to Christian schools.
Yeah, to me, the real tell of that tweet is the thing at the end about the NEA, because it seems to me that it makes a lot of sense that, the details differ over the decades, but that you get all of these panics about public schools and how bad public schools are, and how, whether it's promotion of charter schools or it's they're all teaching our kids critical race theory, or they're grooming the kids, or, whatever it is. Because look, just from a basic right-wing perspective, public education, I think, is objectionable primarily for two reasons. One is that it's one of the only things in our society that's actually publicly owned. It's outside of the market. It's a public good that's provided within the state-owned sector. And two, it's unionized, right? That this is a lot of places. This is the only thing that's consistently unionized. So obviously, if your agenda is to undermine the public sector and to undermine labor unions, then obviously you're not going to like public schools very much, and it is. But I also so that's one thing. But I also think, we were talking about free speech a moment ago. It's like, this is pretty chilling stuff. I mean, like, anybody who's actually been a teacher at any level, I mean, I have, for decades at this point, just imagining, and even if you haven't been a teacher, just whatever the fuck you do for your job, assuming it's not being on YouTube, imagine that there's like a little camera installed that like lots of strangers who don't like you very much can watch you. Yeah. I said assuming that you're not doing it on, that you're not on YouTube, in which case it's a self-inflicted injury. But that a lot of strangers who don't like you very much and are going to uncharitably interpret what you're doing are going to like monitor. So like, if you've had a job where somebody's like micromanaging you, think about how bad that is. Then imagine that we have this like vast crowdsourced micromanaging.
I mean, I want to also kind of echo a point Paul Prescott brought up, that a lot of charter schools don't use not all, don't use unionized labor, and teachers and employees unions within the school system is probably the largest unionized workforce we have in this country.
Yep.
Breaking the backs of the public education system and making it a public-private partnership, the way most charters operate, would really hurt the small labor movement that we're seeing in this country. And what would education then look like when you take kind of all the teeth out of the labor movement as far as teachers? Like right now, you have teachers in Los Angeles talking again about striking, and they were just on strike a few years ago. and the Oakland Unified School District was on strike. And, of course, we saw the very large Wildcat strike, which should be inspiring for us on the left in West Virginia, where people are crossing all sort of political lines to get together to ask for not just better salaries and smaller class size, but, hey, we need to be able to live where we teach. And in major metropolitan areas, that's been the cry of these teachers. And we're talking about public education. Sam, you're in New York. I'm from the Bay Area. Ben's lived in major metropolitan areas the majority of his life as well. This is where public education is the prime example for these people to show the failure of it in these major metropolitan areas. So it is frightening, in my opinion, to see this assault on public education, and we should be taking it much more seriously.
Yeah, there's like this kind of attack too is really sad, because you can look on YouTube if you watch those like board meetings and stuff like that, because they are like, part of it is they're trying to make these parents feel like these teachers are predators. And if you look online, there's videos of like librarians who are like, I'm not a they're literally like,
Yeah.
I'm not a pervert, and it's so sad to have to see somebody who's, like you're saying, like somebody who's just a worker, who's a normal person trying to do something positive in the world, have to defend such a, terrible attack. It's horrible.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that, like, look, if you're a K-12 teacher, I mean, I think that you're actually doing something, not to be too cheesy about this, but I think you're doing something socially important.
Yeah.
And you just, and you deserve to have a much better job than you have right now. And all this stuff is giving you a much worse job than you have right now. But like, also the like level of authoritarianism of this is like insane. And, I don't know if this has, I don't, like, it's been introduced. I don't know what's going to happen to it in the Mississippi State House. I want to be really clear on that. But like, you have like Ben Shapiro, who, because we live in a very strange world, is like one of the most popular political commentators around, who seems to be enthusiastically endorsing this idea that's like this like insane level of authoritarianism, where we're also putting surveillance cameras in university classrooms where the students are adults who can presumably make their own decisions.
His name escapes me right now, but this has been, this has been going on for decades. How college professors are turning our kids into, socialists and communists, and it was amazing. I mean, it was going on when I was in college, and I can assure you that my generation, nobody was, not nobody, but there was like I think, Jason, we've talked about this on my show. You and I have talked about this. Like, it just, there was not even, there was no language for it. We were living in the Cold War, and there was just no, people did not identify themselves as socialists. And the one who did was like getting on Donahue, because he was like, oh my God, he's a socialist mayor of Burlington, Vermont. And it's like, oh my God, even in like in the far reaches, like there's actually a socialist there, that type of thing. And so, yeah, this has been going on for a long time, but this is actually sort of like the, there's a 1-2 punch, because over the past 20 years, really, give or take, teachers have also had to subject themselves to the Gates funded experiment of value-added teaching and high-stakes testing. And they poured $1 billion in of just actually hard cash. And then there's like, that's a, what do they call that? That's it multiplies. There's for every dollar the Gates Foundation put in for their education experiment, like $7 or $8 followed it in other areas and chased that money, billions of dollars across the country, and radically changed, maybe even more, our education system. And just as a note, in 2017, they commissioned the Rand Corporation to assess their experiment. And the Rand Corporation said, Total mistake. Should not have done any of that. You should listen to educators. It got very little play, but it really, there's a whole generation or two of teachers who entered into the profession and, and where good educators assess the kids and teach to the kids, and the kids change from year to year, and they're different within a class. And when they were subjected to this very rigid sort of like a curriculum and rigid assessment, everybody started teaching to the test because they're getting pressure from their administrators. Teach to the test because we're going to lose our funding. We're going to lose our status. Well, whatever it is.
Well, those teachers got locked up.
Yeah,
Remember that? Those teachers were getting arrested because they were given the answers on the test because their bonus, their pay had depended on it. I have to give you a shout out, Sam, as I did a video essay last year on philanthrocapitalism or effective altruism, whatever cute name people want to give it. And you were one of the few contemporary clips I was able to get of someone properly critiquing, and maybe because you had some kids doing Common Core math at the time, I don't know, but properly critiquing Bill Gates's involvement in public education and how dumping all these hundreds of millions of dollars into public education totally changed the way.
Oh yeah, Arnie Duncan and like, I mean, it completely screwed up the trajectory. It's really, I mean, there's so many facets to it, but it really demoralized multiple generations of teachers. On top of which, it's also like a perfect example of like why why billionaires should not be allowed to exist.
Unilaterally trying to change education.
It's just like they sit around and spend $1 billion. You got $100 billion, $200 billion. You can spend $1 billion in the way that, like, I'm thinking, you know what? I think I'm going to get a new blender, and I'm going to get a good one though. I'm going to get one. So maybe I'll spend a little bit of time. I'll go to a couple of websites and see what the best blender is, and then I'll buy it, and then I'll never think about it again. And I'll put it, you don't want billionaires because this is it is antithetical to democracy. And on a whim, they can decide, like, I'm going to change the trajectory of public education in this country. and that's it. And no, it turns out it didn't work out. It's like, and it's a real problem. But in terms of teachers, it's just like, this is the next round of an assault on their profession. And, people don't go into teaching, at least, now public education, K through 12, you don't go into teaching because you want to make a lot of money. That's not why you go in there. You go in there because you want to teach, and you want to teach kids. And it's really just, it then becomes like, how much shit are you willing to deal with to be able to, get the fulfillment out of teaching kids? And it's real. I mean, it's exactly the opposite of what we should be doing as any society, really, it seems to me.
The propaganda film that Gates was one of the producers of, that comes out during Obama's first term, Waiting for Superman. A very powerful film that's anti-teachers union. And what's the moral of that story is that it is tenured teachers that are the problem with public education and education as a whole. And this lottery system is broken. What we need is more charter schools, and teachers unions are the enemy. And that movie still has relevance in the minds of many.
Yep, without a doubt.
There hasn't really been a strong counter narrative to the Gates funded one, because he funds so much.
It's interesting because
one of my favorite things.
Ben, get an internet connection.
His phone died.
Oh no!
I know exactly.
Yeah, my phone died, so I
come in
just do
here
this on the computer without the webcam. But I was just going to say, well, perhaps in a moment. But I was just going to say that my favorite.
Can we get a GoFundMe to get Ben
an
external battery for his phone? I bet you have
still
health
hear me
insurance,
okay,
man.
right? Or no?
No, it's good. Good. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
All right. Well, I was just gonna say, my favorite thing about that movie is if you actually watch that thing, they're contrasted. They're to tell this story about how bad public schools are in America. They're telling the story where they're contrasting it to other countries that have, schools do other things, and they're saying that it's that the charter schools are going to be more like the approach of these schools in these other countries. And the country they particularly hold up as an example is Finland, where not only are the schools unionized, but they actually don't even have private schools. It's like they've said, like, there is a sort of weird workaround where you can have an independent school that does the state curriculum or whatever, but they have essentially banned private schools in Finland. And this is what they're, even these people are acknowledging in this movie is the best education system in the world. So it is, I think it's astonishingly dishonest, and I think it's worth pointing out from my dark, disembodied, voice, pointing this out as we get to the tail end of the episode, that this is that this was a narrative that was not only something that your Ben Shapiro kind of people believed at the time, but was actually very popular in sort of mainstream Democratic Party circles at the time.
Arnie Duncan was appointed by Barack Obama, and he was, sort of like he wasn't a producer of that film, but he could have been. I mean, he was the superintendent of schools in Chicago, and this whole sort of it was neoliberal. It was very sort of technocratic. It was the charter school thing. It took years and years to debunk that film, and it was not as dramatic as that film. There's no one place you can go. And during that era, I was interviewing a lot of educators, because Arnie Duncan was doing real damage to public education in this country, and the Obama administration. And the problem is that educators is that they don't. There's a dilemma, right? Because they can't come up with a bumper sticker of what education is. A good education is, because the whole point of a good education is that you meet the kid where the kid's at. And so, and that is a hard thing to sort of explain in a very easy way. But I interviewed, I can't even remember the name, but he was from the Manhattan Institute, and he had embedded himself in Success Academy, which is one of the schools, I think, in Waiting for Superman. And I think it was about 5 years ago, I can't remember. And he conceded that at the end of the day, the reason why even the best charter schools do well, and the fact is, if you look at the aggregate, some charter schools do very well. Other charter schools do horribly, just like public schools. But if you look at the aggregate, public schools slightly outperform charter schools across the board. There are certain instances where public schools do better, certain instances where charter schools do better. But even this guy basically said what they're doing is cherry picking the parents. They are setting up requirements that basically create a filter for parents. So if the parents are able to come, at 9 a.m. for a meeting, twice a month or something, those are the kids we want in the school, because that indicates, because so much of educational outcomes is a function of wealth. Kids living in the bottom quartile of income, they will enter into kindergarten with tens of thousands of words listening vocabulary deficit, because they just haven't had the same experiences. Wealthy kids, they haven't had the nanny who's going to talk to them all day. So what these charter schools do is they essentially cherry pick the parents, the ones that are able to. They have either the social infrastructure to to be more involved with the kids and et cetera, and that's the way that they get better outcomes. So yeah, it's
and they don't have to deal with special education either. So
exactly. They also
they don't
have that legal obligation to educate every student.
It depends on what state it's in, but they get around it even when they do. They get around it because they just make it so onerous for the parents that the parents ultimately say, like, I'm taking my kid to public school. And that's basically what happens. And that's so
there's a profit motive, and we have to keep that in mind. These schools are run like a business.
Totally.
And unlike public schools, this is where charter schools become really frightening, in my opinion. And in places like Oakland, where they've kind of taken over, where it's becoming a real problem. And that is, if they fail, right? They're gone. But what happens to those kids?
What happens to those kids? And two people have to remember too, like the reason why public schools can function, even with the amount of funding that the underfunding that they have, is volume. And as these kids leave and go to charter schools, that money follows them, and it leaves the public education system. It goes into the charter system, and if that school fails, the local public school all of a sudden doesn't have the ability to plan more than 6 months out, because
and they're close. So,
like,
so
what do you do? What do you do? What do you do if, like, all of a sudden there's 500 more kids in your district?
And here's the double failing of that. So as those charters become successful, inverted quotes, public schools close because no one wants to send their kids to the warehousing of the bad kids school. You close the public school, you have in a situation in Oakland where you have protests. Again, I'm kind of sad more people aren't talking about them. There's protests to keep these public schools open because these charters fail so much because they are money-making opportunities. I don't remember if people remember the football player Deion Sanders. They got caught on tape a few years back shaking down his administrators at his charter schools over money. So, as Prescott is saying, and shout out to Paul Prescott, who also was a public teacher for some time, these schools fail at a higher rate. The market isn't going to give you a better education because who are the people running these schools? So
the original idea of charter schools was actually his name escapes me at the moment, but was promoted by the teachers unions as an opportunity to experiment and do experimentations that are scalable. But the vision of that was lost over the years. And none of these experiments that they're doing are scalable in any way. They work to the extent that they work, and they do work in some schools. To the extent that they work only for those schools. And they bring no value to the public system. And it really is ultimately, different people have different motivations behind them. I think a lot of times, depending on the state, these can be private for-profit schools. They can have more or less state oversight or local oversight. It varies state to state. Massachusetts does a good job of capping this. They actually had a referendum that made it impossible for these charter schools to operate outside of like the authority of the local public schools. But for the most part, charter schools, it's almost like the Iraq War where Wolfowitz said, well, weapons of mass destruction was one thing we could agree on. Charter schools, there's some people are in it because hedge funds are making money. They want to sit on the real estate. They and some of it is ideological. There are people want to destroy the public schools. Some people want to destroy the public school unions. But in the end, it is like it is an impulse that needs to be checked. And we need to go back to allowing teachers to teach in schools rather than sort of like hit their numbers for the quarter.
I was going to say with the cameras thing, probably the worst thing that could happen is that those cameras actually go into the school, because then you'll see, okay, most teachers are, they're good. Most teachers are good. They're trying to create fear, right? They're trying to create uncertainty and suspicion that these teachers are, indoctrinated are groomers and all this stuff. I don't know. I think that's kind of funny. That's probably the worst thing, like with
No,
Ben Shapiro's
probably.
tweet.
Although also, like, if somebody followed you around all day, as you're just kind of going about your business and like recorded everything that you said.
Oh yeah, you find something probably.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You'll find. You can pan for gold of people saying
Right.
get into trouble for.
Yeah.
Which is, it's just kind of a nightmare on the face of it. But I did want to pivot because I want to be aware of everybody's time.
Can I just say one more positive thing?
Please?
I hope if they do that, it spurs an entire generation of kids who like spend their time trying to fuck with those cameras.
Yes.
Like cutting the wires,
Yeah.
or getting up and mooning the camera,
Mhm.
or like putting up like photos of the classroom empty,
Oh my
right
God.
in front of it. Like I gotta hope that there's like at least one kid in every class who's gonna be like, my whole school year is gonna be dedicated to fucking with that camera.
That's going to become a TikTok subgenre. It's going to be classroom fails.
Exactly.
Classroom fails or something.
Exactly.
I can't wait.
So before we sign off for tonight, we did have something that RM brought to my attention earlier today, which is, we've talked a little bit about, taxation. We've talked a little bit about education policy, but this is one of the great minds of our time talking about the environment. So you were the one who brought this to my attention. Actually, first, Jake, do we have the tweet? So, oh no, this is not it. It's the Jordan Peterson tweet.
Damn it, Jake.
Yeah. No, we're all mad at Jake.
You're fired.
Putting out ads for a new
Chinatown.
Okay. So perhaps we don't have it, but RM set this up for us.
I wonder if maybe Sam's seen this because it's been going around. I think Ken Klimpenstein retweeted it, but it's Jordan Peterson, I guess, trying to prove that climate change is fake. And he retweeted a graph that ends in the mid 1800s or something.
1855, which is conveniently right before the Industrial Revolution.
Jesus Christ.
Classic Jordan Peterson. I love that. Yeah. It's sort of, I don't know, you might want to include the Industrial Revolution in a thing about climate change, but who are we to say,
Yeah. So what it is it's a graph of like global climate kind of going up a little and down a little and up a little and down a little over time.
Planetary temperatures or average temperatures, I guess.
And so you see, look, all of this, none of this seems to be, none of this seems to be that dramatic. It seems to be cyclical, and the and so what are you talking about? How can you look at this graph and say that global climate change is a serious problem? And it is just maybe worth noting that the graph cuts off pretty early in the Industrial Revolution.
Jesus.
Well, Michael Mann wrote that book, The Hockey Stick, and the hockey stick is the graph where it goes along like this, and then all of a sudden goes whoop, like that, and that's what's happening in terms of like CO2. And it is a function of the way that our society, I think there's a good argument that capitalism just keeps chewing up resources and sort of projects a notion that like we have an infinite amount of clean water and clean air and protection from the science, essentially, but it's not the case. I heard some report that like 40% of the plastic that exists today has been created in the past 18 years.
That's sad.
It's bad. We're in a bad situation.
Yeah, Jordan Peterson lately, I've been kind of paying attention to him. He's been really ramping up the climate change is fake rhetoric ever since, especially since he's joined the Daily Wire as a consistent contributor. It's been kind of wacky.
The problem is Matt Walsh has the transphobe beat. I'm told that I can't do that, and that's my thing.
We all have our own place.
Now I've got to search around, and I
He's like a dope fiend for that foundation right-wing money.
can't believe I've got to go back to climate change. I feel like that was done already.
It's like being in a band. He's the drummer. I'm more of the bass.
But
it's like Jordan Peterson will do anything for that foundation right-wing money.
oh, shut up!
You guys need a climate change?
What? Can't we talk about Dr. Seuss a little bit more? Or what about Sharia law? Are we not doing that anymore? Sharia law, is that out?
I'll put on the most brightly colored suit I could find to wear to talk about this.
He will dance for anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the guy is...
The Bojangles of the right.
What about Hollywood? What about the horrible values of Hollywood? Can we know? All right.
Except Beauty and the Beast, movies like that, he seems to really be into. Beauty and the Beast, the original.
Let me see the swimsuit issue again.
Oh yeah, it was something I mad about the swimsuit.
He got mad at the plus side.
It's disgusting.
Yes,
I don't need her rammed down my throat.
Not cute. Not cute.
No, that's
I haven't been able to masturbate to a Sports Illustrated in 5 years.
Where am I supposed to find pornography?
I don't know. I mean, if I knew any jack-off comedians, I could ask them.
I miss the days of long butts.
But I don't know.
Don't make me go out on tour with Dave Rubin again and his stupid stories. Never met a bigger fucking idiot. The idea that I would have to go back out on tour with him was so banal.
Oh my God.
Yes, Dave, there's many, many lanes in that highway. Yes. So interesting.
Sam, did you get your baseball card we made for you?
What?
We made a baseball card for you.
What? No, I didn't.
Did you see Emma's?
What? No.
Yeah.
What's going on?
Oh yeah.
We made baseball cards.
Where are they?
Do you have them?
Can you put it on screen?
I have a. What? Were you going to print some up?
Oh yeah, we got to talk about the Sunday night.
Yeah, so on Sunday night, this experience that you're having right now, where you see Jason and I being physically in the same space, if you, that's okay. But on Sunday night, you could see in person if you live in New York or want to go there. You could see me and Jason, Deep State Kuba from This Is Revolution, Jake and Andy from this show. You can see Emma Vigeland, Matt Leck, David Griscom, Bhaskar Sunkara.
Wait, is Griscom going to be in town too?
Yeah.
Oh shit. Okay.
Yeah. No, we're all going to be live and in the joint. So we made baseball cards for everybody.
Oh, awesome.
And I made sure yours was Patriots colors.
Oh, I appreciate that. You know that they play football.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm saying baseball cards generically because I asked for them to look a certain way.
The Red Sox are the baseball team.
Same colors, brosif.
A little silver on the Patriots.
Silver, a little bit of silver in there.
I'll email you.
All right, I want to see that.
Yeah, I think.
Does Chris Noth still own the cutting room or no?
That's who owned the cutting room?
He owned it when it first opened up.
See, we should have talked to an OG. Dude, I don't know. I advanced the show the other night.
I don't know what that means.
Yes, you do.
See?
Okay, look. I want everyone to know that's how you know your talent. When you don't know the terms for when you're booking, you're like, I don't know what that means. I have a guy that handles that.
Yeah, no.
I
Actually, I shouldn't even heard you say that to me.
Fair enough.
You should have said that to my representatives. I should not have even heard those words.
Sam was not CC.
Yeah, my bad. Yeah, sorry, never again.
Bother him with that, but yeah,
I'm gonna spend my time now working on forgetting that I heard that.
So, all of those people, Naomi Caravani, it is going to be really good. So that is going.
Is it going to be in room for the audience, or is it just like it sounds like?
No, we're just going to have like
it's going to be full of everybody who's on the show.
2 people and like 5 seats for them inside the building. Everybody else is going to be on stage. No, that is going to be on Sunday night. This Sunday night, the 22nd.
What time is it at? Because your poster, incidentally, says it's at 6 p.m. But the doors open at 7 p.m.
Screw that up. It should be the other way around, obviously. So,
well, not obviously.
Okay. Well, the reason I thought it was
because it could have been the doors open at 5 and the show's at 6. It's not obvious. Because my daughter's asking me like, when should I babysit? And I'm like, you know what? I don't know, because the doors open an hour after the show starts. So I really don't know at what time you should start babysitting.
Was that the way that time works is that
well, how do I know, like, when I see a poster that clearly is wrong, how do I assume, like, okay, maybe the doors are supposed to open at 5 and the show starts at 6? Like, I don't know what the nature of the mistake you made is. And it does seem like you haven't even corrected it, which is also like, it makes me believe like it's quite possible this is the way they're doing it because it's cool.
It's an experimental show. I mean,
super avant-garde.
You know, he's doing
the show. You enter into the show when it's an hour into it.
He's doing like a Bertolt Brecht kind of thing. I don't know why you don't get this. I think it's really cool, actually. So
I love the show. When I got in there, they were so into it.
Like an hour,
they were doing it for an hour, and they were just going.
Cutting edge stuff.
I hate to be boring and say that time is going to continue to work in the way that it usually does here, and we will ask the booking agent to let Ticketmaster know that that's the wrong way around. But
it's that way in your poster.
Oh, is that in the poster?
Yeah.
No, I thought it was a Ticketmaster link.
I think it's in the poster too.
Okay. Well, is there a way to resolve this right now to look up the?
See, now I got.
When is the actual? The show actually starts at 7 and the doors open at 6.
Yes. The 6 continues to be before 7. And
what time is it?
But also 5 is before 6.
So
and 8 is after 7. Just FYI.
Okay.
8 is after 7.
It's true.
I don't know. We're gonna have to fact check that, but
aren't you glad you're not Sam's like agent getting yelled at?
This is going to be contentious. This is going to be contentious. I'm not letting go of this. I'm making a vow now. 90% of what I talk about at the show is going to be this. The other 10% is force the vote. Force the vote. Force the vote and the time thing. That's it. That's all you get.
This time mistake.
I'm gonna go change what the food's gonna be backstage now because I don't want Sam. What is this? Just cold cuts? What is this?
Oh yeah, no, I better.
Yeah, no, I'm pretty sure Sam likes the bowl for just green M&Ms. So
I'm gonna launch my Instagram based upon what's in the food.
Oh shit! I totally have to go change that right now because I can just see Sam being a total dick and being like, "What the fuck is this? I wanted little sandwiches, light mayo. What is this?
How am I supposed to eat this and do a show?"
Yeah. What the fuck do you think I am? I'm the
Is there
fucking brother.
is there going to be a recording of this that we could see?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
there will.
Okay.
Yes,
Cool.
there will.
All right.
So this is at the Cutting Room on Sunday. This is the
It's like a what? 25th Street, right? 25th or 24th?
It's wherever Uber drops us
Yeah,
off.
don't worry about it. Good job with the marketing here. Did we get the time? We're gonna the address. It's around 25th or 24th between 5th and like Broadway. Or 5th and 6th, I think.
You got Ben over here Googling where the fucking thing is at now. He's all worried and shit. Sam, you
Oh shit, he's looking up where the show is.
all up now.
This is that classic Seder and Burgis routine. Where is the show? Where and what time is the show? This is their classic bit. I love this.
Exactly.
I was pretty confident that 6 is in fact before 7. But I did need to double check this 24th through 25th Street thing. So it is 44 East 32nd Street.
Oh, they moved it.
New York, New York. The zip code is 10016. So if we could
on that poster, it looks it's accurate.
Yeah, that is the poster that we made.
There's another poster out there that you're tweeting out.
I'm telling you, is that ours? I think we've been hacked.
Somebody's fucking with you.
It's okay. It's the person who retroactively.
You didn't have Bree do your graphics for this, did you?
Oh yeah. Gotcha. Yeah.
So in any case, Cutting Room Sunday, VIP meet and greet at 5. Doors open for general admission at 6. Show starts at 7. You're going to hear all of this like very entertaining thing that we've been doing for the last 5 to 10 minutes. If you enjoyed that, you're going to love the show. So we can get into exactly like what's on like all the adjoining blocks, and and whether I know that.
Oh no.
More about what the poster says.
Me and Sam are going to start West Coast beef. Is what's going to happen.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, that was my old hood, that neighborhood right there. So I watch out.
I'm just imagining Sam sitting on the stage.
I get my crew from Koreatown come over, and there's going to be problems.
on it, and it's all circled, and it's like, and we are not talking about anything else.
That was back when I did Taekwondo, so I got a lot of my old
Steven Seagal the shit out of us.
Yeah.
Well, I wouldn't miss that if I were you. So that is on Sunday. The link is down below the screen that you are watching right now. So I am, I am fairly sure that for people who are watching this, who are not on StreamYard, but who are on YouTube, the link is in fact below the box where we're all talking right now. So I'm really looking forward to that. Thank you guys so much for coming on tonight, and I am really looking forward to seeing you, Sam.
There could be fisticuffs. I mean, the people should show up for this because it could get ugly.
Yeah, no, exactly.
I mean, I'm excited to go to the studio. Like, we'd be ready. I've been lifting weights and shit. Like, I'm ready. I'm coming. I feel like a t-shirt just to.
Jason should be ready to hold me back.
But check your email. Real talk. Check your email. I'm sending you a thing right when I hang up here.
All right.
And see, I want people to know this is what it's like to deal with the talent.
Can't believe this. I'll be on the phone with my agent. What time is it in LA? Okay.
In the Bay, it's 7. Where would Bay?
No. I'm just concerned what's happening. I want to know what time it is in LA. I need to talk to my reps about this.
It is.
How the hell this happened?
Never again. Never again.
So before we go through,
somebody in Beverly Hills is about to get reamed out.
I think we're going to call it right there. We're going to go to the post game for GTAA patrons with Deep State Kuba and Jordan Dubin. Thank you guys again so much. I am, despite the repeated threats of physical violence against me that you just heard,
I am still looking forward to seeing this guy in a couple of days. Left is best.